Hi there, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. This is Alex, I guess.
Yes, this is Alex, sorry.
That's
What I'm
right.
gonna do is I'm gonna put you on speaker, put you by a microphone. So it might be a little strange, but we can at least get your audio in.
All right, but I'm not hearing anything from your end.
Yeah, we're still muted on our end.
Okay,
So maybe just mute until you wanna talk and then we can make sure you're heard. Is that
okay.
okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine. Thank you,
Okay.
Alex.
Yep, thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sure. On the phone. He's gonna be able to hear us and talk. Yes. I've got it.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Thanks for the very erudite discussion earlier.
Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Are we able to get the TVs on? With the audio. Go.
Okay, perfect. We are ready to go. I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 16th, 2025 Cottonwood Heights Planning Commission business session. We have a few items on the agenda tonight. But before we jump in, I just want to make sure there aren't any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed.
No.
Seeing none, okay, we'll go ahead and move forward. We will go ahead and start with first an introduction of Maverick. I want to introduce Maverick to the public, and Maverick is a planner. He's a city planner, and also we are saying goodbye to Ian. This is Ian's last meeting with Cottonwood Heights staff. So welcome, Maverick. Goodbye, Ian. Okay, we will start. We are going to actually reverse order of what we talk about first. We are going to start with project CUP 25011, also called PUD 25001, a public hearing and potential action on a request by Brent Johnson on behalf of the Giverny Master Association. What? Oh, thank you. Days. It's a good thing people keep me in order here. We will start with general public comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. If anyone has comment they'd like to make that is not related to any of the items on the agenda, please go ahead and step forward. There will be an opportunity for public comment for the items on the agenda. And you have 3 minutes, and there's no negative. We keep good decorum during the public comments. Okay, seeing none for general public comment, thank you much. I will close that. And then we will go ahead and go to project CUP 25001, which is a request by Brent Johnson on behalf of the Giverny Master Association HOA to amend the community planned unit developments rules regarding some accessory structure setbacks. This is technically a conditional use permit, although it was noticed as PUD 25001.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I will go through the same presentation that I gave you last session, just because there are several more members of the public here. So please stop me if you have any questions or clarifications that you'd like me to make. The applicant is also in the audience and can speak to this project after I'm done. And you're welcome to ask questions of them as well. So just the context for this project, it encompasses the whole Giverny Community Planned Unit Development Subdivision. I think we're all familiar with where that is. The approximate address is just off Giverny Parkway, off Wasatch Boulevard, when it splits from Little Cottonwood Canyon Road. I think we're all familiar. Our recommendation is to approve this project, and I'll kind of go through why that is. Just for some background, the original Giverny Community PUD application about 10 years ago included distinct setback standards for primary structures, but it had nothing to say for accessory structures. These primary structures were allowed reduced setbacks, I think, on all 4 sides due to the smaller size of the properties compared to non-PUD R18 zone subdivisions throughout the rest of the city. R18 is the zoning designation of this Giverny community, and it's what we find throughout most of our city. I'd say about 80% of our city is zoned R18. But the standards in Giverny are different from the rest of that area. Many Giverny residents have constructed accessory structures without understanding city code regarding accessory structures. Based on the narrative I received from the applicant, building permits are not required for structures less than 200 square feet. So oftentimes when residents are constructing buildings that are less than 200 square feet, they don't interface with city very much and may not understand the rules and regulations we have for accessory structures. But our standards are still required to be met, even if they're smaller than 200 square feet and don't require a building permit. So again, the request in the staff report is a bit different than the request that the applicant is asking for, because the recommendation that was provided after the staff report was published. My understanding initially was that the applicant was asking for a deviation from 2 different city standards. They were proposing a stronger setback, 5 feet instead of 3 feet from the side and rear property lines for accessory buildings, and no minimum distance from the primary structure, whereas the city standard is 6 feet of distance from the primary structure. My understanding initially was that these would only affect open air gazebo and pergola type structures. However, the applicant later clarified that they would like sheds to be included in this list of affected structures that these modifications would cover, and that affected structures would be able to be located up to 3 feet close to the property lines in rear yards if roof height does not exceed 8 feet tall. If it's taller than 8 feet, a minimum of 5 foot setback would be required. There was some building code and fire code discussions that we had in our last meeting regarding this. The applicant may be better able to speak to that, but I did receive communication from our building official that they had no major issues with this as far as building code goes. Staff's planning and zoning analysis is that we found the request to be reasonable, given that the reduced lot standards within Giverny complicate accessory building location on lots within the community that other residents in Cottonwood Heights within this same zone do not face. Additionally, there's no new standards that are being proposed that I'm aware of that would bring these accessory structures closer to property lines and impose an increased visual burden on neighboring properties. And again, the building official at the city said that they weren't aware of any building code implications on this amendment. We interpreted this request as a conditional use permit application, given that PUDs are a conditional use in the R18 zone. Planning Commission, based on City Code 1978 160B, has approval authority on PUD amendments, and there are more details on that authority in your packets, which are also publicly available on the city's website for residents or any attendees of this meeting to view. As far as noticing goes, notices were posted and mailed based on our standards. We also posted a physical sign at the property and noticed in all of our required virtual places as well. We received 1 public comment by our deadline yesterday. We didn't receive any other public comments after that deadline. And then I would just note that this application was originally noticed under that file number PUD 25001. We since reorganized the file to be under a conditional use permit file type. And like I told the commission in the last meeting at 5 o'clock, if someone in the future were to submit a records request for this project, that original file number that this project was noticed under would redirect to this new CUP file number. So we should be able to provide anybody records, whether they're requesting them for PUD or CUP, that transparency will still exist. Again, our recommendation is to approve the project with no additional conditions. There are findings in your staff report that elaborate on that a little bit. And then I have model motions here that include some of those clarifications that were made after the staff report was published. You could use this wording if it works for you. I imagine you may want to speak to the applicant for some information on those clarifications, but I've got that for you when you're ready, and I'll take a step back now and let the applicant come up to speak if you'd like.
Thank you, Ian. Certainly would love to hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Planning Commissioners. My name is Brent Johnson. I'm a board member for the Giverny Community Association, and I thought what I would start with is to give you a little history of kind of why I'm standing up here today, because I think this will help to add a little perspective to all of you on why we are actually making this request. The project was approved in January of 2015. And as Ian said, the primary focus of the builder was to basically get setbacks that were smaller lots and smaller setbacks for the homes. There's nothing they did for accessory structures. So Regal actually turned over the community to the owner. So they departed as declarant and turned that over to the owners in October of 2023. I was actually on the first board that was elected in January of 2024. What we immediately discovered is there were a lot of things that the developer had not done. Specifically, they had not really created a specific set of design guidelines that we as a board could use to apply to any applications that homeowners made for any additions they did to their house, including accessory type structures. So about that time we were getting people that were starting to submit these, and we said, before we do anything and before we approve anything, we should go meet with the city and make sure we understand the parameters of what we have to work with so that we're in conformance with city guidelines. Now, at the time this happened, there were probably about 35 structures already existing in the community. I included some examples of what those are in the packet. And after I started meeting with the city, what we started to realize very quickly is we had a lot of structures on site that did not meet the current city guidelines. So as I was working through this with the city, we said, as a first order of business, we were going to reach out to our owners and actually have them send us what they had built as far as the size of the structure, the setbacks to their house, the setbacks to the rear property line, so that we could kind of assess and try to create a standard that could work for most of the community and try to save most of these structures. What we received was pretty underwhelming. I mentioned there were approximately 35 structures, and only about 13, maybe 15 people actually sent in information to us, many of whom sent us information where they actually applied for and received a building permit. There were a lot of owners that I talked to, there's some here tonight, that shared their story about how they had talked to city staff. They thought they were in compliance, to Ian's point, because they were within the they were within the standards that didn't require a building permit, but they weren't really hitting the setback requirements, which is really mostly what this is about. So I think just really due to my busy work schedule and kind of dropping the ball on this, I really didn't take much action from last summer until March of this year. What happened was code enforcement showed up due to a complaint they had received, and they showed up at one of the property owners' houses and basically told them, hey, you're not in compliance, and they red tagged them and told them their structure needed to be removed. I immediately got a call from Mike Johnson, who I had been working with to try to resolve this, and we decided at that point we really needed to advance these discussions and move forward and come forth with a formal plan. So, I think as part of this plan, the board has really three goals. And we talked about this, or I heard you all talking about this in the pre-meeting. The first, and really probably the most important, is we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the fire code. And I think if you look at what's happened in California and other states with the wildfires, insurance companies have a very quick trigger about pulling insurance for homeowners. So we want to make sure that whatever we do is in compliance with the fire code. The second thing is we want to make sure that we're maintaining an aesthetic value in the community, because I think that with the smaller lots and the homes being closer together, the board had a real concern, and many people in the neighborhood had a concern that if we have too many of these structures and we're not continuing with the aesthetics of that would be a problem as well. The third issue we're trying to do is to create a standard that would hopefully save a majority of the structures that have already been built, and or allow homeowners to modify their structures so they could be in compliance. So I actually had a pre-meeting with city staff. It was with fire, building, planning and zoning, and code enforcement, with really a focus on fire. And so I think when we talk about the setbacks, the easiest way to understand this is that most of the structures we have, people are located within 6 feet of their house. If you're within 6 feet of the house, that is considered part of your house. And if that is the case, then you actually have to meet your building setback lines in the rear and sides, which is 10 and 15 feet at this community. And so what we're really asking for is to allow people who are within 6 feet to then get a lesser setback, which is 5 feet around the perimeter of the house. And if they do that, they're actually within the fire code, because at that point, the structure is actually considered part of the house. And according to your building official, James Short, by maintaining that 5 foot, it's in compliance with fire code. Now, we have asked, as Ian talked about, it's not in your packet, but we asked for a slight modification of that if people can be up to 3 feet away if the roof height is only 8 feet. And part of the reason for that is if you're closer than 5 feet, you have to do what is a 1 hour firewall. And a 1 hour firewall, just to describe it, basically looks like a wall you would see in your house. And what we're concerned about is we have some individuals, and we're trying to avoid this, that have very tall structures. And what the building official has told me is that you have to contain the area of that wall by up to 75% of the space. So if somebody is at 8 foot, that firewall only has to be at 6 foot, and it would effectively be contained behind the privacy fence that maybe 2 homeowners would share. So it would be virtually invisible. Anything higher than that, and we're very concerned aesthetically that what the appearance is going to be is that it will look like a racquetball court, or a person's going to have a 6 foot privacy fence, and then they could have behind that a 10 foot tall firewall. And so that's why we had the distinction between the 3 foot and the 5 foot. But basically, everything we're trying to do is make sure it's in conformance with fire. They were at the meeting, they did review it, but this really defaults to the fire portion of the building code, which your building official had said he would support. So just to really wrap up, I think the other thing I would like to say is I've lived in the community now for almost 3 years. Almost all of these structures were built before I moved in, and certainly before the board, the owner board took over for the association. The part that is so confusing to all of us is how it took this long for it ever to come up. And the city was out there conducting building inspections, homes were being built, these structures were getting built, many of which got built by the developer. And so this problem existed long before certainly I lived in the community long before I stood up here. What we're really trying to do is create a standard that's going to salvage as many, is to be compliant with fire code. It's going to salvage as many of the structures as we have that are existing, and also allow us a standard we can use moving forward. So with that, I'm here, if this is what you need me to do, to answer any questions.
What questions do we have?
I know that you brought up the requirement also including sheds later in the application. Could you elaborate on that as far as sheds being built close to the buildings? I know that most of this has to do with pergolas, but are you proposing to have sheds be, zero setback up against a building?
Yeah, I think everything we're proposing, and I do, you brought up a point of something I forgot to clarify that I heard in the pre-meeting. These are really what we're talking about is detached structures. These are not going to be, they're not going to have 4 walls on them. A shed would, but these are not going to be things that people live in. These may or may not have a roof on them. Some do. There's pictures of what I'm recommending, but it's basically a detached structure with 4 walls on it, which would include a shed. And yes, a shed could be within close proximity of the house, but it would need to maintain the 5-foot buffer. And I don't know that you could fire rate a shed to where somebody could get it within 3 feet. It's just, somebody made a joke in the pre-meeting that, a tough shed has like a 2-minute fire rating, not a 1-hour fire rating. So I think that's going to create a problem for the owner to even hit that standard. So that is a structure to me that just based on the fact that they wouldn't be able to fire rate it, it would probably need to be 5 feet away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good luck.
Appreciate that. I'll now open up the time for public comment on this project. I'm not sure if any of the ones we've been. Probably so. Okay. I have one comment card here. I'll start with that one, but then certainly if there are others who would like to speak, can do so. So as a reminder, you have 3 minutes. There's no applause, no cheering, no booing is allowed. So we'll go ahead and start with Richard. And when you step up, we'd appreciate if you'd state your name.
Hey, good evening, y'all. My name is Richard Herr. I'm a new resident of the Gaverny neighborhood, 3466 Brenton Lane. Thank you guys for y'all's service. I know how dedicated that is to y'all. I bought my house less than a year ago with a structure, a gazebo already in the back, and a shed already on the side of the house. Of course, during my due diligence, nothing was mentioned. The shed, the gazebos probably was built right when the neighborhood was. So they were still, my neighbors tell me they put it up when their other homes were under construction still. So it's been there quite a while. The sheds, I think, is like 3 years old, based on what the neighbors tell me. My apologies to Brent Johnson. I never received a notice from the HOA about a phone call, a letter, or an email about submitting pictures and setbacks. So maybe I've just slipped through the crack, but I never received that. The sheds that I have, like I have, and I've seen many of my neighbors have, it's going to be impossible to have a 5-foot setback for sheds, very specifically on the side of the house. Maybe in the backyard, that's going to be possible, but then you're not going to be able to go 3 feet off the property lines. It's just the lots are so small. There's just no possible way to have a shed on your side yard that meets any type of restrictions other than up against the structure. And again, if the structure will be a brick or stucco wall there. And that's, in my case, that's the case in my neighbor. And I'd say every neighbor I've met has that same facility going on. He talked about the fire code. Well, my structures are metal with misting systems, so they're, I won't call them fireproof, but they're exceptionally fire resistant. The gazebo is taller than 8 feet, but it has power, water, ceiling fan. It's a very nice structure, and to be honest, it's the reason I bought in the neighborhood. That was the entire reason I bought that house, was that backyard. It's completely paved in by the previous owner and had that beautiful backyard with a water feature and everything. So I understand there needs to be code. What I'm asking as an amendment to the petition is to grandfather in these existing structures. Because again, when I bought my house, I did my due diligence. We talked to the city. Nothing was said to us. My HOA disclosures said nothing about this. So my petition is, I'm going to move ahead with new code, no problem. But I think there needs to be a grandfather clause in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this project?
Hi there, I'm Jill McGee. We do not live in the Giverny, but it surrounds our home. And my husband and I spoke with Maverick this afternoon for a moment. We just want to go on record because this does surround our home, which is a couple of acres, that this clause for gazebos, a pergola or whatever, because we are a larger lot, that this 5-foot setback or whatever not be included if there were ever have the idea of a pergola going up near our property lines, that they would have that 8-foot setback, that 6-foot, 8-foot setback. We would just appreciate that just go on record. But we've seen the pergolas in the Giverny and they all look wonderful. They are lovely. So we give them every encouragement and hope that this can come to a resolve for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary McGee. That's my lovely wife. We live in our area and it's surrounded by the Giverny people. We just want to make sure we've got the common area, the grassy area where the pickleball court is, and there's a little pavilion over close to the road. And we just want to make sure that these will not be put in any common areas. I know there's a lot of common areas through the Giverny neighborhood, but we've got the biggest common area around us. Pickleball court's loud enough, and we're hoping that we never get a pavilion or something that's put over there that's that close to our property. So just want to make sure that this will not affect our privacy and our property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment for this project? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period. Now I'll go ahead and open it up to my fellow commissioners to talk about this. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, I'm sure we do. When I saw the McGee's here, it made me think, and I don't know where this thought goes, but sometimes you see a proposal like this that changes the standards of these neighborhoods, and you think, well, mostly these standards affect the people who live in these neighborhoods, and so they apply to all of them. It's important for us to recognize that the people who are adjacent to this development rely on these same standards and have to live with them. And so when you do something that reduces the standard, it not only affects those people in this development, but those who are adjacent. And we shouldn't lose track of that. It's important to them.
I appreciate that. And if I understand correctly, what is being proposed, unless I missed it, the proposed setbacks, et cetera, are more strict than the cities.
I thought that originally.
Am
I said that originally, but as I understand it now, the proposed setback is really 3 feet. For an attached structure, what would the side setback be of an attached structure? It would be setback of the main structure, right? Because it
Yep.
would be considered the main structure. So that setback would be something like 8 feet?
In Giverny, it's 5 for side. Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Yeah.
Side setback of the main structure.
It's 5 feet in Giverny.
And in R18, what is it?
8-foot minimum.
So it's actually more permissive than I thought when I originally looked at it. These standards are. So the neighbors couldn't put anything closer than 8 feet to their property line, and this development could put something attached within 3 feet, so long as it was only 8 feet. Do I have that right? Okay.
I'd like to make a clarification too, Chair. It's interesting when we see exceptions, especially in light of people's concerns about fire, but, and I'm sorry that people have purchased homes with smaller lots than they feel like they needed in terms of usable space. And I'm sorry that their predecessor did something illegal, and that the expectation that code enforcement is going to come out with every home purchase to do an inspection, that onus in the state of Utah falls much more on your realtor to kind of help watch for things like that. And so I'm sorry if you bought a house that has illegal structures on it. In terms of remedy, I do get concerned because I worry that if something, heaven forbid, were to go up in flames in Giverny, we've already got structures that are very, very close to each other. And then we've added these other structures that are also even more close to each other. And now we want to make exceptions on structures that have been built in the last 10 years. So I'm not sure where I sit now, Chair, but in terms of responsibility, I think it is not incumbent upon the city to retroactively take full responsibility for the circumstance we find ourselves in.
And I'll say I was comfortable with this talking about gazebos and pergolas. When we start talking about sheds, it does, in my mind, bring an additional level of, I feel like, scrutiny and requirements, and to the point of specifically fire and danger, not only to the homeowner, but to the neighbors. So that's where my concern is that now this includes sheds.
I echo that as well. I would like to request, Ian, if you could pull up the R18 shed code so we could better understand what that looks like.
Yeah, I think we would just be looking at accessory building standards in R18. Is that what you're looking for?
That sounds great.
Correct.
Okay. It'll take me a second to do that and then switch my.
And my thought behind this is I do understand that the regulation for sheds within R18 is especially, tough sheds, smaller sheds, larger sheds. It's very well outlined. And if this is going to be a continuation of the building envelope, I think that raises even more concern of the implications of land use across the board.
I don't know. Can you see it all right? It's pretty small.
Yes. So at least 6 feet from the primary building in the rear yard,
Yeah.
20 feet street side of corner lots, 20 feet street side of corner lots, and 3 feet on interior.
Yep.
So with this, the proposal is that you could put a shed up directly against your house on the primary unit and 3 feet off of the property line. And I believe property lines and current setbacks off of properties right now is it a 10-foot setback on those properties primarily in Giverny?
For the primary structure?
Well, primary to lot line side.
10 to 15.
10 to
I'm hearing.
15?
Yeah.
So right now you're potentially adding 180 square feet right up against the house, you know, 0 setback off the house, and then potentially, you know, I mean, that's 10 to 15 feet. I mean, it's just a lot of extra mass that it's very clearly displayed of what the setbacks are for auxiliary buildings here. I mean, that concerns me quite a bit. And I would love to have fire look at this, but I echo Lucy's sentiment about what, you know, pergolas I'm more comfortable with, sheds I'm less comfortable with.
Sounds like that's a common thought amongst you commissioners. Is that fair? Okay.
Another thing that's occurred to me as I've listened to my fellow commissioners is the thought that here there was a request made to make smaller lots, and because the lots were going to be smaller, they should have smaller setbacks, so they would accommodate the homes they wanted to build on them. I think the connected thought there maybe should have been, okay, but if we're going to do that, then these accessory buildings can't eat up more space too. So I think it's kind of doubling down on the same thing where it should go the opposite way.
What is the lot coverage ratio that's required under R18?
For the R18 zone, the maximum lot coverage is 50%. I think that's the standard we use here. It's a bit different for our sensitive lands overlay zone. But I don't think these lots have the hazard within sensitive lands that would require a different standard. So I think 50% coverage is our rule.
So with this now being a continuation of the primary building, is that going to affect and now get them out of compliance from a lot coverage standpoint?
It's 50% for the entire lot, primary building or accessory, if I'm understanding.
So it could, so you're saying that that
Yeah.
addition could violate, then make it so it's not, so it's greater than,
Yes, if their lot coverage was more than 50%. And I believe that standard is the case in Giverny as well. Jared, do you know if we have different standards?
Lot coverage standards.
Yeah, for Giverny. I don't know. That would be a Mike Johnson question, unfortunately.
Should I send him a fax?
Yeah. But the R18 standard is 50%.
So with this now being kind of a redefinition, because they're defining it as part of the primary building now, that could potentially have effect on the lot coverage ratios and then still keep them out of compliance. Yeah,
Whether attached.
correct.
Yeah, I don't know that the distinction between attached and detached are in the lot coverage
Okay.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that lot coverage requirement is not for like the rear yard, it's for the entire property. And I would also note that that's for structures, not pavement as well. It's treated differently. It's just for accessory structures or primary structures.
just in terms of, I mean, I don't want to move to motion, but is the thought that we have it be what it was, I don't know where I want to go with this.
Can I ask another question, Ian?
Yeah. The applicant or me?
You,
Oh, yeah.
now if I can remember. The absence of a specific standard here for accessory buildings, does that leave you with no standard, or does that leave you with the R18 standard?
The R18 standard currently.
So that is the current standard today. These, if anyone had asked, and if the answer was given appropriately, the R18 standard should have been given them for these accessory.
Yes, oftentimes when people ask us the accessory building standards for their zone, we'll tell them the setbacks from property lines. We try to tell them the setback from the home as well, although that tends to not be the exact question that the person is asking. But if we refer them to the rules, that they would see that rule there. If we've given incorrect information, obviously, we apologize, but the code is fairly clear.
Not at this time, thank you. Well, if we are done deliberating, then the next step in the process is a motion.
I feel like there's some interesting things that need to be studied here, primarily from the standpoint of what precedent within R18 does this set? We understand that this is a PUD, this is an approved PUD, but because a PUD moved forward to be out of compliance and there's a high ratio of residents within the PUD to be out of compliance, I think we need to sit back and understand, is this something that we could open up to not just an ordinance within this PUD, but an ordinance within R18? And if we are comfortable within all of R18, it may be something that we could propose to review, but I do not want to discriminate against all the other R18 within this space and state, we need, there's a reason that this code is here, and we need to better understand why this code is here. So I'm going to propose to table this to another meeting.
You want to make that a
Is
formal motion?
I will motion to table this to our meeting in August. Do you have exact date for that, Ian?
Yeah, it's only
August
2
6th.
weeks. August 6th.
Ian
I will-
loves this idea.
I will table this to August 6th to
Second.
discuss this.
Was there a second?
Second.
Okay.
So we had a motion by Commissioner Steinman and a second by Commissioner Barnes, or Mills. Okay. Discussion about the motion? Here's my question about the motion. What is it we're hoping to learn? Because I think we need to define what answers we need in order to be able to evaluate and be able to finalize this in the August meeting. So I think we need to provide to staff some specific questions.
I would just add that if you give staff direction for what you'd like to see from the applicant, we can meet with the applicant and go over that and try to come back to you with an application that fulfills what you're looking for.
So I believe because sheds was something that was newly proposed within this application, I think we need to understand sheds and the definition between sheds, pergolas, and any additional auxiliary features within this space. I believe we need to understand, the implications if this were to be across all of R18. How do we remediate this, and what is going to be some of the fire risk that goes into this place? Being something that's just one community, I think we just need to further understand what the implications are going to be, across R18 for this.
And I would say that understanding that meeting with building and fire does not supersede the code. So having a meeting with building and fire does not supersede what's legislatively in place right now. So, and additionally, that if we've gone to exceptions to the code that have allowed exceptions, very exceptional lot sizes, and we're advocating for expanding on accessory buildings, that argument needs to be discussed and presented in a way that you think is safe to the public and reasonable based on legislatively what exists right now, not just our municipality. Like, help us understand how we can defend this. This just feels really, really hard to defend right now.
Does that give you what you need?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, we can discuss that with the applicant and return to you with more information.
Okay. So we have a motion to table this until the August 6, 2025 meeting, pending information gathering from staff. We had a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote. Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
and Commissioner Anderson, yes. Okay.
Yes.
We will discuss again.
I'll just say to the applicant, because I have to present the next item, I'll email you and we'll coordinate next steps. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Project ZMA 25003, public hearing and potential recommendation to City Council on a request by Nathan Anderson for a general plan amendment, land use map amendment, and a zoning map amendment rezone on parcel located at 3425 East Bengal Boulevard. Both applications have been combined into one. Both are required to rezone the property from NC Neighborhood Commercial to RM Multifamily Residential, which the applicant is seeking to do.
Okay, you ready for me?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Thanks, Alex. We'll shut that door so that the commotion out there isn't as loud. So again, just a summary slide on this project. This is that Wells Fargo property across from Smith's, just east of us on Bengal Boulevard. The applicant's requesting a zoning map amendment and a general plan amendment in association with that rezone zoning map amendment application. The applicant is the same one who you met before, who applied for the live work townhomes, so he'll be familiar to you. And our recommendation is to approve tonight. I'll go through the request. I don't want to provide too much background because it can kind of drag on, but essentially this used to be a former bank branch that closed down in the early 2020s. The applicant who is proposing this project came to you at the beginning of this year with a live work townhome proposal. There were concerns about that from members of the Planning Commission and members of the public, so that item was continued on. The applicant eventually withdrew it. Simultaneously, our city council issued a moratorium on live work developments while the Planning Commission and staff worked to develop regulations and a definition for live work developments. We've since adopted something that responded to that concern. A church use was proposed at this property after the live work use was proposed. That was eventually withdrawn as well. The applicant is returning to you today with a request to rezone the property to a residential multifamily zone instead of the current neighborhood commercial zone, so that they can eventually develop a project on the property. What's being considered today is just the rezone, not any sort of development approval. Although the rezone, if it was to be approved by city council, would have implications on what could be developed there. So I would just ask members of the commission and members of the public to keep that in mind. The request that's being made today, again, is twofold. The current land use designation, as it's described in our general plan, is neighborhood commercial for the property. This is kind of just kind of for members of the public. Our land use map is different from our zoning. Our land use map kind of predicts what could be developed on the property in the future in the general direction of a lot. That's not a great way to put it, but that's kind of the best I got right now. Anyway, the general plan states that this property would be a neighborhood commercial property, essentially a general commercial use at a low scale. What the applicant's proposing is to modify the land use designation in the general plan for this property to be residential medium density. This would then unlock the applicant's ability to rezone the property from neighborhood commercial, as it sits right now, to residential multifamily, which is what the applicant is trying to rezone the property to. Our analysis of the request is that this is generally compatible with the city's long-range vision and goals for the area. We kind of discussed this at length. There were different thoughts by different members of the commission, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you have while I go through this analysis. But I'll just kind of run through the points that I have here now. Our findings were that single-family attached dwellings are permitted uses in the RM zone. These are essentially townhomes. These wouldn't be duplexes, which involves one structure that's broken up into two units. These would be row homes, basically, where they're attached at the wall. Anyway, these are permitted uses in the RM zone. Other than home occupations, no commercial or office uses would be permitted in the proposed RM zone without a conditional use permit. The designated land use of many nearby properties along Bengal Boulevard and the surrounding vicinity is also residential medium density, which is the proposed land use today. While no property in the vicinity is zoned RM, as was noted in the last meeting, many properties are zoned R-2-8, which is basically our duplex zone in the city. It's another multifamily zone. These properties do contain a similar density of dwelling units to what is being proposed here. I don't have like an exact calculation for you on that density. And again, the proposal is just conceptual at this phase, but that should kind of give you an idea for what the applicant would like to do here. Just a few other points. This property is the only parcel on the north side of Bengal Boulevard in the vicinity that's zoned and designated as neighborhood commercial. So it's somewhat an island on that side of the street. The neighborhood commercial zone allows residential uses under the neighborhood mixed use category within allowed conditional uses. So the NC zone, which is what this property is right now, does allow residential uses as part of a mixed use development, basically. A development of this type would likely entail a more intensive land use for the property with a similar number of residential units compared to what the applicant wishes to eventually develop if they get this rezone designation approved. While detailed development plans are not part of this proposal, RM zoning standards would still apply to any development applied for on the property, such as minimum lot sizes, minimum lot widths, setbacks, maximum height, lot coverage. And then my city manager, he made the note, I brought up in the last meeting that open space requirements be required as well. We found that upon closer inspection of the zoning code, this lot does not meet the minimum size requirement for open space to be included as part of the project. I would note that that's also true for the R28 zone. So the similar zone would not require open space for this project as well. So that wouldn't be a requirement here. As far as procedure and authority goes, these are legislative actions, this rezone and this general plan amendment, meaning that the authority of this body here today is to take public comment from members of the public, discuss merits of the proposal, and make recommendation to City Council. The City Council is the final approval authority for this application. More details on this project and the authority and procedure can be found in the staff report, which is again publicly available on our website. We did post and send notices for this project to property owners within 1,000 feet, as our code requires. We received 8 public comments via email by our deadline on July 15th. We didn't receive any comments after the deadline. I do imagine some members of the public here today would like to speak on this issue, which they're allowed to, so that's great. We find that this application is code compliant as outlined in the staff report. Our findings of fact are listed in the staff report. We recommend approval with no additional conditions, or we recommend a recommendation of approval to City Council with no additional conditions. And then just a note, again, 2 separate motions and votes will be required, one for the land use map amendment and one for the proposed zoning map amendment or rezone. And then I've got model motions ready when you are, but I'll turn the time back to you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. I know the applicant is here. Would you like to, do we have questions for the applicant? So is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you for allowing me to come back. My name is Nathan Anderson. I'm the applicant. I think Ian addressed most of all the concerns with the property in rezoning it from NC to RM. Our pursuit is to do what is more typical and more compliant with the area surrounding this property on Bengal Boulevard and 3500 East. From this building to Wasatch Boulevard, it's primarily residential, with the exception of that 2600 East intersection area. So I think it's the right thing, less dense. It is all compliant to the written word of the RM zone. So it can meet all of that. And I think that serves the community, the city, to have more housing stock at a more attainable price. So beyond that, and what was in the written narrative that was given to everybody, I think everything has been addressed. So any comments or questions.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I will open up public comment period. Reminder that 3 minutes, no booing, no clapping, no cheering. Okay, I will start with the ones that we have comment cards for, starting with Robert Farnsworth.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The general plan and the surrounding areas are, as you know, predominantly single-family, R16 and R18, and then an R28. That's low density. That's not high density. The closest RM that's been noted is 1 mile away. I believe that spot zoning in most cities that I work in and develop in, they don't allow spot zoning anymore. If you're going to develop in a lot of cities I've worked in, you have to have a zoning district. And so you're going to have a minimum requirement of the acreage to do something like this. You do in your PUD zone. I think it's 2 or 5 acres. I can't remember. I read it one time. Anyway, the general plan also directs multifamily to be in areas like Fort Union or areas near transit corridors. My biggest concern, though, about this proposal is the unknowns. So what's unknown here? Last meetings, we presented to you guys, you really drilled into us that you're in favor of most conditional use permits. I kind of understand why. I see what other cities do, and it's a little bit different than yours. However, so let's look at that. What are other uses that could be in that RM zone since we're not looking at a specific plan for approval? We could do a hotel there. We could do a bed and breakfast, and we could do some type of lodging. Now, do we really want to bring skiers down here to our neighborhood instead of putting them in the hotels where they belong? That's what will happen. It doesn't mean that he's going to go build that. It just means we don't know. That's a conditional use. I know the neighbors, and we'd like to see something really nice go in there. And as we've stated before, we actually appreciate shop and frequent Smiths and all of the little small businesses that are around there. We hope that that same neighborhood makeup could stay there. I'm a developer too. I know that there's change, but I think that we need to have an appropriate change. The zoning that is compatible with this neighborhood, really, if he wants multiple units, is an R28. I'd like the commission to think about that and deny this zoning because the unknowns though. We don't have a guarantee that he's going to go build that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Cox.
Sorry for my public speaking. I'm very nervous, so just bear with me. Good evening, Honorable Chair and council members. My name is Sean Cox. I reside at 7761 South Oak Shadow Circle, just directly north of the proposed development. I strongly oppose the proposal to rezone this parcel as neighborhood commercial to residential multifamily, mostly because there is no buffer zone to the R1 that's directly on that same street. Council, this rezone is fundamentally mismatched to our established neighborhood. Our community is characterized by single-family homes. The RM zone especially allows high-density development. This proposal change is not just a tweak, it's a radical shift that will irrevocably alter the very fabric of where we live. As an immediate neighbor, the impacts are deeply personal. An RM development here with structures potentially reaching 35 feet means windows and balconies will look directly into my house, specifically into my bedrooms and into my backyard. This is unacceptable invasion of privacy and a direct assault on the sanctity and peaceful enjoyment of my property. Furthermore, the applicant claims the current commercial zoning has proven to be a failure and created blight on the neighborhood. From our perspective as direct neighbors, however, much of this perceived blight appears to be a direct result of developers' own lack of basic property maintenance and upkeep. We've watched the grass die and the trees fall onto the sidewalks. This neglect isn't an inherent failure of NC zoning, it's a lack of effort to maintain the property or market it for viable commercial use. It's disingenuous to claim the zoning is the problem when the property has been allowed to fall into such disrepair. Rezoning this parcel would eliminate the potential for services that would benefit the community as a whole. I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to all new housing. Our community can accomplish growth responsibly. Opinions like duplexes or single-family lots that are in compliance with the already established neighborhood fits the scale and character of our neighborhood without sacrificing privacy or overwhelming our infrastructure. If any rezone from NC is considered, it should be one of these. This rezone sets a dangerous precedent for our community in Cottonwood Heights. It will put a strain on our local infrastructure and destroy the privacy and quietness we value. I urge you council members to protect our existing community. Please deny application and preserve the character and quality of our life in Cottonwood Heights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kelby?
So good evening. I'm a resident that also lives on Oak Shadow Circle, and I'm here to voice a strong opposition to the proposed rezoning of 3425 East Bengal Boulevard from neighborhood commercial to residential multifamily. This request is inconsistent with the character of the surrounding community and area and directly undermines the zoning reforms this commission adopted. The current NC zoning is appropriate. It allows for low-scale neighborhood serving uses like the adjacent Smith's, Ace Hardware, and family restaurants, and respects the surrounding single-family homes. There is no precedent for high-density, three-story RM styling housing directly adjacent to this parcel. Approving this rezone would set a troubling precedent for placing high-density, multi-story developments directly next to the established single-family neighborhoods. Although the petitioner previously submitted this application with no development plans, they have now added renderings showing 6 units in a 3-story configuration, very similar to the size of the 34.5-foot proposal submitted earlier this year. That earlier plan faced overwhelming community opposition and was withdrawn, triggering the thoughtful zoning updates that were adopted just last month to limit NC building height and preserve the neighborhood character. This updated submission makes clear the petitioner is pushing the same project under a different zoning label, hoping to sidestep the new rules. That's not good faith planning, that's an end run around policy. If approved, it will undermine not only the NC zone, but the commission's own authority and zoning integrity. And finally, all 6 proposed units would dump their traffic onto Oak Shadow Circle, a quiet cul-de-sac with only 9 homes. This street was not designed to support multi-family traffic volume. It's a safety issue, a quality of life, and another reason this rezone does not fit. As clearly stated by another public speaker, the applicant also had mentioned the poor commercialization in the area due to upkeep. I would say he mentioned the closing of banks. Well, U.S. banks are closing around the country, so that's not an excuse for why it's not sustainable commercially. And there was a bank in U.S. Smith that closed, and they still run a great grocery store and service to the community. I urge you to reject this request, stand by the zoning vision the commission has worked hard to establish, and honor the clear and continued opposition from the surrounding community. The petitioner is now seeking to rezone solely to enable the same scale of development, 3-story high-density housing that previously drew significant public resistance and was withdrawn. This kind of project already has been rejected by the community, and the commission should not allow it to move forward simply under a different zoning designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? And before, I'm sorry, before we do that, we didn't get your full name, and I apologize. Would you mind stepping back up? And is your last name Kunn? Is that right?
Kuhn, Kuhn,
K-U-H-N.
Kelby Kuhn.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Apologies.
Hi, my name's Eric Romero, and I live in the neighborhood for the past 15 years. And came across a sign saying you were having this meeting, so we decided to come and give you our 2 cents. Sitting here, I was horrified listening to Mr. Ian. I thought he was best friends with Mr. Anderson. It sounds like you guys already approved it. But I'm here just to state my concerns. Please do not put an apartment complex in my neighborhood. I'm a realtor. I know what it does to value. We do have a sense of it on Majestic Street where they're all duplexes, and the congestion and traffic has made it where you don't even want to drive down that street because of all the duplexes that it was zoned for right there. So I live in this neighborhood, and we have not moved out because of the quaintness and the beauty of the single-family homes and all the neighbors and wonderful people. I do know what apartments bring in, and that's what I feel like they're trying to do. So I hope that you guys represent the public. And I was just horrified. It sounded like it was already approved earlier, so it's my concern for coming up here and speaking. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Paul Hatfield. I also live on Oak Shadow Circle. And at this point in time, I'm not, I don't want to have Nate not build something here. I just don't want to have you guys approve R1 today without knowing what his intent is. I want to see something that's congruent with the neighborhood, and his last proposal was anything but. So if nothing else, I would ask you to please postpone this until we know what Mr. Anderson wants to build there so that we can come back and say, yeah, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not. But at this point in time, I would ask you to deny this rezoning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name's Bob Piper. I also live in Oak Shadow Circle, and just want to bring to your attention the recent state law that passed that you can't park or stop in a bike lane. Bengal Boulevard doesn't allow any parking in front of this at all. So all the extra people will park in our cul-de-sac. Recently, some church made an application to put in a business there, and the Ward Church next door to us denied any parking in their area for that. Same thing last meeting when he started on this before. We had a representative from the church here, and they didn't want it. They wanted a sign put up, and we also asked for a sign to be put up. But now, under the current proposal, he wants to dump all his traffic, like Kelby said, onto our cul-de-sac, and we only have 5 or 6 extra spots. So that's a problem. Smith doesn't allow any extra parking across the street in their parking lot either in this area. So parking and traffic through the area is going to be a real problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sydney Wagstaff Romero. I feel like I should have done a lot more preparing for this meeting. I don't have any facts or figures or laws to talk about. I just do want to say that I hope this does not pass. This is a beautiful neighborhood, and we've been asked multiple times, why don't you move out? Why don't you find something bigger? Why don't you go somewhere else? And we keep saying, because we love Cottonwood Heights. We love our little neighborhood. This is not what this neighborhood is about. I work in downtown Salt Lake City. I am heartbroken every time I drive into work at all of the apartment buildings that have gone up and what it has done to the complexion and to the personality of that area. I don't want that to happen here. I love Cottonwood Heights. I love it as it is. I don't want a multifamily unit going up in that spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period.
Commissioner Anderson, I have a question for Mr. Farnsworth, if it's appropriate, Or did I?
No.
Okay. no,
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I, a couple of things I want to clarify for maybe people who weren't in the work session in terms of what the building requirements could be for any structure that's built here, whether it's neighborhood commercial or RM, is that 35 feet is the maximum height, correct, Ian?
Yes, so 35 feet would be the maximum height for the current zoning regime, neighborhood commercial. It's also the maximum height for what the applicant's proposing, and I would also add that it's the maximum height for a structure in the zoning for that Oak Shadow Circle. 35 feet is the maximum for all those zoning types.
And in terms of commercial use for RM zone, that would be a conditional, is that a conditional use?
Yes, let me pull up the RM
Sorry,
zone.
I cannot, I read this and I.
No, you're good. I think that one of the public commenters kind of
Thank you.
brought it up as
Commissioner
well.
Moses.
Let's see.
The permitted uses are single-family dwellings, accessory buildings, and home
And then
occupations.
conditional
And
uses.
there's a laundry list of
Yes.
conditional uses, and I think that the comment spoke to that accurately.
Yeah, and I won't list them all off, but like hospital, hotel, lodging house, nursing home, those are all some of the conditional uses in that
Which
zone.
would require.
A
it
conditional use
require
permit application and your review to make sure that anything that's being proposed doesn't have factors that can't be mitigated as far as nuisances go.
Okay, thank you.
Ian, what is the current setback requirements for neighborhood commercial?
I'll pull them up really quick. Looks like for neighborhood commercial, minimum side and rear yards of 25 feet shall be required for those portions abutting a residential zone. For lots adjacent to a non-residential use, the minimum setback shall be 10 feet for side and rear yards. Let's see.
So is it 10 feet on the church side?
Yes, because it mentions use, not zone.
Perfect, thank you.
And then there is some additional.
What's rear and front setback?
Let's see, rear is 25 feet along with side. Front, yard along the street. Front depends on the least restrictive adjacent residential zone. So I think it would be the same as R16. It's a little complicated.
So right now, just so I can clearly understand,
Yeah.
what the applicant could do today is a singular building, commercial on the base, residential up above.
Yeah, that would fall under the neighborhood mixed use category that's permitted as a conditional use under neighborhood commercial zoning.
Okay.
Yes.
So right now they could come in, especially with the mixed use, neighborhood mixed use. They could do a not a multifamily. They could do an apartment building with commercial on the bottom.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
As part of a conditional use permit application.
What is the current, is there any approved uses currently for neighborhood commercial?
I believe they are all conditional. That came up in our last few meetings where we discussed this property, and that hasn't been changed. You're looking at things like a convenience store, medical office, neighborhood mixed use, like the one we're talking about, restaurant.
And then what is our requirement for conditional use permits? As far as how do we have to look at them? If there's not any permitted use within neighborhood commercial, how do we have to look at conditional use permits?
I think it's best stated in my staff report for this project. Let me just scroll to it so I can read off of that.
And I'm trying to get some light for everybody that spoke up today, just as we're going through this process. It's not an easy task. There's a lot of different factors that go into this.
Let's see. I listed it actually in my staff report for the Giverny application because that was a CUP, but this basically describes from our city code, actually it's from state code, how we have to treat conditional use permit applications. Okay, it looks like it's not scrolling anymore. I'll just read it off. So the following excerpt from Utah State Code tells us this. A land use authority, that's Planning Commission, shall approve a conditional use if reasonable conditions are proposed or can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance with applicable standards. And then the second line isn't quite as important. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. So right now, what we're looking at is if they go to the form and they have a singular building, they could put as much density as they would like into that space that would fit with parking requirements, fire requirements, safety requirements, meeting, structural integrity. Is it international building code or is it commercial building code on this one?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think it's commercial, so it has to be a commercial building code. So they can do a large mass building out of the space, 35 feet tall, I believe it is 2 stories would be the max. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are several mitigating factors in the neighborhood commercial zone, as there are in the RM zone, that kind of restrict what you can build on the property from a reasonable perspective, but you're right.
What would be some of those mitigating factors? For specifically NC?
Setbacks would be a big one. A limit of height would be another. A limit of 2 stories would be another. But we don't have a specific unit density limit in the NC zone.
So if there's not a specific limit density, technically, if you went subterranean, and I'm trying to look at every factor here. If they went subterranean for their parking, they could build a lot more units here.
Perhaps, yeah. I'd have to really see a full development proposal to offer extensive feedback, but yeah.
But the lot coverage ratio does not preclude that. It does not give you any density. Okay.
Correct. It doesn't have anything to say about the density of units.
And going through that exercise, I want to just better understand, because right now I see potentially, and I think there's some interesting study here, potentially this is going from a commercial, high use, high impact to we get a fixed density. And right now I think the ratio for that fixed density, the calculations I can see here is they can't go over 6 units with RMF zoning. Is that correct?
With RM zoning, there's no maximum unit density to my knowledge, but there is requirements on, pulling up the RM zone, there is requirements on how big the lots can be.
So let me go to setbacks. I think this may clarify where you're going. Rear setbacks, right now, we're talking about 10 feet where we sit now, would be going to 30 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so front setbacks, we're at 25 feet, we'd be going to 30 feet.
Yes.
Side setbacks, we're at 10 feet and we're going to 25 feet.
On all sides?
On the sides of the ends, the barrier ends.
25 combined on corner lots, that's 30 feet on the street side and 10 feet on the interior side.
So to that
Hard to
end,
visualize.
with a maximum lot coverage of 50%, correct?
Yes.
And we're talking about a half-acre lot.
Yeah, 0.48 acres.
How tall is the tallest point of the Wells Fargo building right now?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, Commissioner.
We hit that number at one point, one of these discussions.
Yeah.
You shout out a number, Nathan. We don't want to hear from you other than that. 26.
They can go up to 35 feet in the zone that it is now or the RM zone.
So 35 feet either way.
Yep. That's what the code allows.
But then we are restricting density today. We have nearly a definitive density based on what's applicable here, where it's a little ambiguous under NC.
Ian, if we deny this today, what recourse does the applicant have?
They could appeal your decision. Ultimately, you're offering a recommendation to City Council, though.
If the applicant were to choose to appeal, what typically are the grounds that a decision would be reversed?
Can you speak to that, Jared?
I don't know what the grounds would be, but it would be an appeal of the city council to district court, so.
And typically would be on the grounds of whether or not the recommendation would have been legal based on current code. Is that accurate, Jared?
Yeah, but because it's a rezone and a legislative action, there's some differences there because we're not talking like a conditional use permit that's you have certain conditions if they meet them that they're good. But since this is a legislative action, then I can't get. I don't know that I've ever been involved in an appeal of a rezone decision.
And to that end, if our recommendation, which is what we're doing, is a recommendation, we can't approve or deny. If our recommendation was denial to the city council could still approve.
Right. Yeah, because you are just a recommending body in this case.
And typically with rezones, if they even appeal, my understanding, it is up to the discretion of the council. So an appeal won't go too far on this. Now, I think the implication here is use and, it is turning into a blighted property in a way. But what can be developed here? And if we are looking to rezone something that is under reasonable development, where if we do not approve something like this, we don't know what we're going to get. Under neighborhood commercial, we have redefined neighborhood commercial, the live work component, which I think we made some massive strides to, but it still doesn't cap density. So if Mr. Anderson decides to sell this and we have a really good condo developer that comes in and gets some low income housing tax credits and wants to do a 12-unit condo project, for rent condo project, they would have the right to do so in the conditional use. And that's where I look at this as relatively concerning, is we see a cap on density with this rezone. We don't see a cap on density with the current neighborhood commercial here. And that's my concern.
I'd like to defend our process too, Chair. It gets difficult sometimes when we hear from members of the public that there's the implication that, developers get whatever they want. I think Mr. Anderson would vehemently disagree with that. We probably created some pretty serious brain damage for him in the last 2 projects that he's done with us. And we are not afraid to put his feet to the fire to make this as good as we legally can for the residents. And it is, I think, our intent to try to do what's best for the neighborhood. But the status quo is obviously comfortable with everyone. And the problem is that there are property rights in the state. And this is not just a Cottonwood Heights thing. This is a state of Utah thing. And if we see something that appears reasonable, Chair, we have to consider it. And this is not about personal preferences or anyone's particular agenda. And there's an understanding of trying to preserve a little bit of what we have had in Cottonwood Heights. But this is not the same place that it was in 1950. There will be people in this city that wish that it were 1960 or 1970 or 1980 or 1990. We benchmark whatever we think the best decade of Cottonwood Heights was. And I think that as we consider this to that point of blighted property, and I understand, but watering the grass is not going to immediately turn this into a viable commercial property overnight. So I think as we consider this, there are opportunities to protect it. I'm grateful for the things that Sean has brought to light in terms of the effective possibilities for it under the current zoning structure and under this new zoning structure. I think it actually will be quite a bit more restrictive. I was a little surprised to see this application, to be honest, Chair, because this is more restrictive than what he could have done previously.
And to share some additional details to that, neighborhood commercial is a zoning that I think has great use in our community. I think part of the ambiguity of live work previously created some tension. And with neighborhood commercial, we have to look at this site and we have to look at the R28 in, 2 parcels over, and then R28 directly, 2 parcels over to the other side. And then you look at the neighborhood commercial directly across the street. If we look at that neighborhood commercial across the street here, it's a different form, it's a different mass than this half acre. I'm guessing that's about 7, 8 acres approximately. And if Smith's and the Woodburys decided to sell that site, that could be a large multifamily project today based on neighborhood commercial zoning. And I think use out of that, the economics come into play with a lot of that. But I think the creation of neighborhood and the intention behind neighborhood commercial is to be those barriers to low density, commercial, or I'm sorry, low density residential sites. And this island right here, I think that it has the possibility of hitting that high density and high density commercial site. And that I think is a concern. And that's, were you able to find any more details of what this was zoned previously?
Prior
before
to neighborhood commercial? No, I do imagine it was a commercial zone though.
Commercial zone?
That's my guess as a planner.
Okay. Yeah, I think neighborhood commercial is very unique. And I think that large scale projects like this, or like across the street, could, really transform what's happening here in the neighborhood. And I think this gateway piece is very difficult to evaluate as a developer, as a city, as the community.
I agree. I agree with the potential risk of it remaining neighborhood commercial. To me, it's a bigger unknown, excuse me, than the RM zone. So I appreciate the thoughts and the evaluation of this and the fact that the RM zone does have stricter setbacks and what could possibly be built than the neighborhood commercial. So do we have further deliberation?
There's a hand raised.
Yeah, I might just make a comment. This is Commissioner Smith, and I'm getting a little echo, so that's a little disconcerting. But it does seem to me that this is insights that have been brought up. I am left feeling that really this is the purview of the city commission to give us some guidance on what they would like to see in this neighborhood, and does this proposal match the overall plan for this neighborhood and for Cottonwood Heights. I'm glad that we are just making a recommendation rather than making a decision here. I think it really is the purview of the city commission. And I think it would be well for them to consider the zoning options to try to resolve this conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. I think it's time to move forward with a motion. Ian, would you mind putting the motions up there? Thank you.
And then I would actually reword what you're seeing on the screen, because it says I move to approve, but you're moving to recommend.
Recommend.
So you'd say I move to recommend approval, or I move to recommend denial, rather than I move to deny or I move to approve.
Thank you for that.
All right, I move to recommend approval of project ZMA 25-003 pursuant to the findings and recommendations listed in the items staff report dated July 16th, 2025.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Shelton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mills. Discussion about the motion? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes, Commissioner Polson,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson, yes. Okay. That'll close that item. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda of Planning Commission minutes from June 4th, 2025. I'd like to ask, as people are leaving, they be considerate and quiet. Thank you. Any comments or feedback on the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes from June 4th, 2025, Planning Commission.
We have a motion by Commissioner Steinman,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Polson. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Mills, second by Commissioner Shelton. All those in favor?
Aye.
I see you August 6th.